So if I ruled the world, I'd recast education. Particularly, like, obviously the school system is not working for the world today, right? And the thing is, it's modeled for a school, or schools are modeled for a society with the more Leave It to Beaver type scenario where you have this functional family, and by functional I mean mother, father, people that only father has to work, mother can stay with the kids, or vice versa, who cares? But ultimately, like this nuclear family prescription, because like if the kids are going to go to school, there's the expectation that they have what would be considered common sense, right? It's like this, I know how to conduct myself in this situation, a social situation specifically. And so you got these kids who ultimately, and truth be told, have parents that should not be parents. I'm sorry. Should not be parents. Or they don't know how to do it. Really, that's what it comes down to, is maybe it's not that they shouldn't be parents, but they need to learn how to do it. And they don't know how to do it. And truth be told, a teacher will tell you exactly which kids have functioning families at home and the kids that are struggling more. Okay? And so here's this thing, that there's this balance of play of whose fault is it that this kid is acting up? Is it the kid because of some psychopathy, like something that would consider to be of a psychological disorder, ADHD, Asperger's, whatever have you. You know, they've got some kind of IEP. Kids that have an IEP, right? Something that causes them not to be able to conduct themselves properly in a classroom setting. So there's either that psychopathy, I think that's the right word, or the parents aren't doing something right. Because you got either this nature versus nurture. That's really what it's coming down to, is this child's nature inappropriate for this classroom, or maybe the classroom environment is not appropriate for this child's behaviors, right? So it's got to be one of those two. Or it's a nurture type thing, and this kid is not being accommodated for at home. Either mom's not doing something right, dad's not doing something right, but ultimately they are not functioning, nurturing this child to behave appropriately. So then it becomes the responsibility of the teacher, now more than ever, that we need to figure out what's going on with this kid, whether it's psychopathy or bad parenting. And then the job of the teacher is to counteract whatever that behavioral, emotional problem is with the child, so that we can teach them. So that's the current condition of education. So to do that, there needs to be a lot of faith in the teachers that we know what the heck we're doing, right? With all these kids, with all these little personalities, we're with them at least 8 hours a day. And then the parents just go put them to bed, maybe get them up, you know? Not downplaying what parents do. But there's a balance, right? So if we're to facilitate children to be in society and have an appropriate aptitude for functioning in society at large, then we need to offset that, you know? So if they're not getting it from the parents and they're not getting it from their personality, it's the teacher's job to be that third space, that third personality that helps offset one or the other. So that requires us to know the kids. And it is my belief that if we're going to do this appropriately, we need to prepare them for society. And you hear about how there's desperation in a lot of work positions for people who have work ethic, whatever that may be. You know, what do you need to do to be optimal for this job? So the teachers have to kind of guide that. And like, okay, this is what you'd be good for, and this is what you'd be good for based on the time, the aptitudes that you have in school. And so that's the direction you should go. But with that is also the recognition that some of those kids are not going to be cut out for all these jobs. So ultimately, if we're doing children a service, you need to start school preparing them. So what do they need? Okay, these kids, the basic things are categorization, organization, referencing, things like that. These very basic things that are necessary for the grand scheme of being human, let alone in society. So teaching them from a young age how to cook, how to clean, how to organize, how to put stuff back, you know, where, like, if I put this back, it will be there the next time I need to use it. Aha, I'm organized. And then also care for objects, you know, so like if they're breaking stuff and throwing stuff across the room and like wasting things or not cleaning things so that they're properly maintained so they break down faster, those are basic things that they should be learning to counteract the idea of the throwaway society and I need to buy a new one whenever it's not clean or not fixed, and I can just I know where the old one is, so I can find it. So you either lose it or it breaks because of miscare or the inability to care. So these are the basics that should be rationalized for students, and I believe they can do this by enacting things from the service industry. You know, like, okay, we need to clean up. That means we got to do the trash, and we got to learn how to wipe things down, and this basics of cleaning, you know, and organizing. We need to put the toys back in their place. And ultimately, you can do this if you do it well through kindergarten. But then it needs to continue, because we get far, like, play, particularly in kindergarten, is the most functioning schooling you could possibly teach, because they're learning, they're playing, they're integrating, they have to learn where stuff goes and where to put it back. And like, oh no, we're not going to leave this mess. No. We're going to clean this up so you guys know how to do this so that we can be more efficient and our stuff lasts longer and it's cleaner and we know where these things are and have this certainty in our life. So if we're to service students properly, that means this needs to be cultivated throughout. And being an art teacher, that's how this whole scenario works. I need to get these kids to function on their own, and so that I don't have to micromanage them. And that's the difference, because in society, and this is where it gets a little controversial, I would say, might ruffle some feathers, is if kids are behaving poorly, we expel them from society. We put them in prison or jail or something like that, or we fine them. And there's nothing that we can do as teachers to replicate that. So there's no shame a lot of times. They can take getting yelled at. They can take this stuff, but they need to be held accountable. And so how do we do that? By showing them hypothetical things like math problems and science papers and things like that. These things need to be shown and enacted in the day-to-day. Why is this important? And ultimately, and I teach this in my art classes, if kids are doing this efficiently, so they have to do so many projects in my class at a time. But they know if they get done with one of the assigned projects, then they can do whatever they want. And by whatever they want, they can work on other art projects that they want to do. So it's still directed. They're still accomplishing something. It's not like they're going to sit on their phones and things like that or whatnot. Like, there's a time and a place for that. And so you need to get them to this point where they know that they have to be working on something, but it needs to be productive. And that's why artworks are so easy to teach this, because if you get done with this, you can go choose something. Okay, do you want to draw? Do you want to paint? Do you want to play with clay? You want to make something on cardboard? What do you want to do? You know? Oh, I want to do this. Great. Go do that. And as long as you're working on that, you're still earning points because you're doing something. You're being productive. And so I've talked about like the idea of the star chart, and that's the very, I guess, physical manifestation of how am I doing every day. So when a kid sees, oh, I haven't done anything for this many days, and my artwork looks like this, and this other kid's looks like this, you know, that's how you determine what is good. You know, how much time and effort, how much capability, how much refinement it went into this art piece. So these kids that work multiple days and think about what could they add and what could they make it, how could they add detail, and what would make it look more realistic, how can I fill up the whole image as opposed to just drawing something in the middle. And so after they accomplish this, they realize that if I have two choices. I could just crank on this artwork and get it done if I don't like it, but that gives me the opportunity of working on something that I do want to do, which is great, perfect. You accomplished what you needed to do, you check the boxes, now you get to do what you want to do. But if you're not doing that, if you're just dinking around, or you're throwing pencils, or you're wasting stuff, or you're not cleaning up after yourself, you become less efficient, and you ultimately do less. So the whole purpose of the star chart and this type of education would be to teach refinement, how to do more and do better in anything that they're doing. If I've got time, let's focus it on this instead of like flipping through phones and like worthlessness, and then concerning yourself on things outside the here and now. Like, look at all these things out there. I mean, literally, if you're watching this video, I'm one of them. But ultimately, it's trying to focus on other things. And if all people are talking about are things that have no relevance in your life, like, oh, look at how this person's dressed, or oh, look at how these people live, or things like that, you're taking the focus off of yourself, and ultimately you're like, I wish this would be like this, and I wish this would be like this, because you're seeing things outside of your everyday experience. So this is ultimately grounding students to, hey, this is what our society is. Like, our school is our society. Each classroom is a society, and then we've got this larger society, you know, it's all governmental, really. And so if you're teaching self-government from the beginning, instead of having to follow what the teacher says or a curriculum and everything like that, they'll learn. They'll be like, I've got a bunch of kids, I haven't taught the wheel yet, the clay wheel in my class yet, but I've got probably like 8 kids from all ages being like, hey, can I go play on those? I'm like, yeah, go get something done. And they like, you hear them get frustrated because they're learning. Like, frustration is the sign of I don't get this. But the fact that they grunt through it and they're like, okay, I don't like this, but I'm gonna figure this out. That's fun. That's type 2 fun, you know. So it's making society fun again. But you got to teach that in school first, because if we're sitting there concerning ourselves with everybody else and what everybody else is going on, we are losing focus on ourselves. And like, you guys can go and act like morons over there. We're gonna get stuff done, and you can reap the benefits of acting like a moron. So the fact that we're not punishing, and punishing is a strong word, not showing the students the negatives of their actions. That's what punishing is. Like, if you're doing it right, like, you did this, and now this is the repercussions. You made a mess. Now we have to clean more up. And like, oh, you didn't clean out the paintbrushes. Now we have less paintbrushes. Shaming. You know, that's really the arsenal of the teacher, is like shaming students. You know, sorry. That's our move. We can't punish them any other way. Like, so we need to instill shame, which is not a bad thing. Like, if you feel shame, you work harder, and you got to keep it within a healthy aspect. You know, ultimately, you need to know what shame is, and directly connecting it to the thing that is shameful, so that it is not over amplified. That the reason you have shame is for this particular reason, not because of these reasons. You can do these things, don't do this one. And if you don't do this one, you can get a lot more done. You can have a lot more fun, and then I don't have to worry about you. Don't make me worry about you. So, forming the curriculum around that, number one, that should be elementary school, that should be middle school, and like by the time it gets to high school, it shouldn't be a thing anymore. And ultimately, that's the preparation for being in society. We're doing a miserable job because we're working under this auspice of the space race education program. We need to teach science and math so we can get those people into space, you know? And then industrializing and turning it into a factory scenario where everything's compartmentalized. Science is between this time and this time. Math is between this time and this time, you know? It's all going on. And to separate and categorize it is perpetuating this, I'm not this, but I'm this. And not like, oh, this all ties in together. This is all the gestalt. This bigger picture. But how can we ever recognize that if we don't start that? And this is the great failure of education. We need to restart schools. I don't like teaching in this type of school. I love my students. There's some students that need to be given the education that they need, which is not necessarily putting up with their whatever shenanigans they're doing. It's showing them the error of their ways. You know, punishment, like I described before. That needs to happen. The trust needs to be in the schools to be able to do that effectively, which also puts the burden on the teachers to be better teachers. Paid more. Because we have to do all that. So, if I ruled the world, I would start taking in consideration this type of education, which really puts the perspective back on that education is a lot. And it needs to be recognized and respected as such. And for whatever reason, the government is showing us how badly the government's run, so who cares about who's raising the next generation? Who cares about? That's terrible. So ultimately, we want to fix generations to come. You gotta start with the education of the youth. Plant trees, you know. Gotta start with the seeds. Caretake them, nurture them so that they grow to the full tree, so that they can help protect and nurture us all. about that.
Do more, do better.